Captain Jake Morrison stood at the front window of his ship, looking down at the strange planet below. His ship, the New Horizon, had been flying through space for 6 months now. They were far from Earth, farther than any human had ever traveled before. Jake and his crew were explorers, sent to find new worlds and see what was out there in the dark space between stars. The planet spinning slowly beneath them looked dead at first. It was brown and gray with no green plants or blue oceans like Earth had. But their machines were telling them something different. There was power down there. Old power, but still working after who knows how many years. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Collins from her seat at the computer station. "You need to see this. The energy readings are going crazy. This isn't just some empty rock. There's technology down there, and it's more advanced than anything we have back home." Jake walked over to look at Amy's screen. Numbers and colored lines danced across it, showing power levels that made his eyes grow wide. Whatever was on that planet, it was built by people who knew things that humans were still trying to learn. "How old do you think it is?" Jake asked. Amy pressed some buttons and more numbers appeared. "Hard to say, Captain. But based on the decay patterns, I'd guess at least 1,000 years, maybe more." Jake felt a chill run down his back. 1,000 years ago, humans were still fighting with swords and riding horses. Whatever civilization had built the technology, below had been traveling between stars while humans were still trying to figure out how to make better plows. "Get me Commander Parker," Jake said into his communication device. A few minutes later, Commander Lisa Parker arrived on the bridge. She was the ship's expert on alien things, the person they called when they found something that didn't make sense. Lisa had studied every piece of alien technology humans had ever found, which wasn't much until now. "What do you think, Lisa?" Jake asked, pointing at the screen full of energy readings. Lisa studied the numbers for a long time. Her face grew more serious with each passing minute. "Captain, we need to go down there. If I'm reading this right, we're looking at weapons platforms, defense systems, and something that might be a central computer. All of it still active after all these years." Jake nodded. "Put together a landing team. I want to know what happened to the people who built all this." 3 hours later, Jake found himself walking across the surface of the alien world. The ground was hard and cracked, covered in a thin layer of dust that had been building up for centuries. In the distance, strange metal structures rose up like the bones of some massive creature. The landing party moved carefully toward the nearest structure. It was huge, easily as tall as the biggest buildings back on Earth. The metal it was made from had a strange purple color that seemed to shift and change as they walked around it. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported Sergeant Tom Baker, who was carrying their portable scanner. "Whatever this thing is, it's drawing power from somewhere." They found an opening in the side of the structure. The doorway was clearly not made for humans. It was too tall and too narrow, suggesting that whoever built it had been very different from people on Earth. Inside, the walls glowed with a soft blue light. Strange symbols covered every surface, flowing and moving like living things. Lisa pulled out her camera and started taking pictures of everything. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think we're looking at a data storage facility. All of these symbols, they're not just decoration, they're information." Jake watched as Lisa worked with her portable computer, trying to make sense of the alien writing. She had spent years learning how to decode alien languages, and her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. After an hour of work, Lisa's face went pale. "Captain, I'm getting partial translations. This place, it wasn't destroyed by natural disaster or disease. It was attacked, conquered." "By who?" Jake asked. Lisa's hands shook as she pointed to a section of wall where the symbols were clearer. "They call themselves the Valorian Empire. According to this, they've been moving across this part of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. They don't negotiate, they don't trade. They just take what they want and destroy everything else." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are they still out there?" "The records suggest they are. And Captain, based on the star maps I'm seeing here, they're moving in our direction, toward Earth." The next few days were spent copying every piece of information they could find. The alien computer systems were incredibly advanced, But Lisa and her team worked around the clock to decode as much as possible. What they found painted a terrifying picture. The Valorian Empire was vast, controlling hundreds of star systems. They had massive fleets of warships, weapons that could destroy entire planets, and a complete lack of mercy for anyone who got in their way. The civilization that had once lived on this world had tried to fight back. The ruins around them were all that remained of their efforts. "How long do we have?" Jake asked during their final meeting on the planet's surface. Lisa looked at her notes. "If they keep moving at the same speed they have been, maybe 50 years before they reach our solar system. Maybe less if they decide to speed up." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. They would return to Earth immediately. The information they had found was too important to risk losing. Humanity needed to know what was coming. The journey home took 3 months. Every day, Jake thought about what they would tell people back on Earth. How do you explain to an entire planet that monsters are coming from the stars? How do you prepare for a war against an enemy that has been conquering worlds since before humans learned to write? When they finally arrived at Earth, Jake called together every important person he could think of. Military leaders, scientists, politicians, and anyone else who might be able to help. The meeting was held in a secure room deep underground, away from curious eyes and ears. Jake stood at the front of the room and began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have discovered something that changes everything. We are not alone in the universe, and we are not safe." He told them about the dead world, the alien technology, and the Valorian Empire. He showed them pictures of the ruins and translations of the alien records. The room grew quieter and quieter as people realized what they were hearing. Admiral Carl Hughes was the first to speak when Jake finished. "How certain are you about this threat?" "Completely certain," Jake replied. "The evidence is overwhelming. They're out there, they're coming this way, and based on their history, they won't be interested in talking." Director Helen Ross from the State Department stood up. "Surely there must be some way to negotiate with them. We could offer trade agreements, technology exchange, anything to avoid conflict." Jake shook his head. "Ma'am, with respect, you didn't see what I saw. These people don't negotiate. They conquer. The civilization we found had technology more advanced than ours, and the Valorians wiped them out completely." The debate that followed went on for hours. Some people wanted to build weapons immediately. Others insisted that diplomacy was the only solution. A few suggested hiding and hoping the aliens would pass Earth by. Finally, Admiral Hughes stood up. "We need to try both approaches. We'll send a diplomatic mission to make contact and offer peaceful coexistence. At the same time, we'll quietly begin preparing our defenses. If they're willing to talk, great. If not, we'll be ready to fight." Jake nodded. It was a reasonable plan, but deep in his heart, he knew it wouldn't work. The aliens had been conquering worlds for 1,000 years. They wouldn't stop now just because humans asked nicely. As the meeting broke up and people began making plans, Jake walked to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valorian Empire was still moving, still conquering, still destroying everything in its path. Earth had maybe 50 years to get ready for the fight of its life. Jake just hoped it would be enough. 2 years had passed since Captain Jake Morrison returned from his mission with news of the Valorian Empire. Earth had spent every day of those 2 years getting ready. New weapons were built, ships were constructed, and armies were trained. But the leaders of Earth had also decided to try talking first, just in case there was a chance for peace. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood on the bridge of the diplomatic ship Unity as it traveled through the cold darkness of space. He was Earth's best negotiator, a man who had stopped wars and solved problems that seemed impossible. If anyone could convince the aliens to leave Earth alone, it would be him. With him were Dr. Nancy Webb, who studied alien languages, and Commander Paul Rogers, a military officer who was there to advise on defense matters. The three of them had volunteered for what everyone knew was probably a one-way trip. "How much farther?" Carter asked the ship's captain. 3 days to the edge of their territory, Captain Steve Wilson replied. "After that, we'll be at their mercy." Carter nodded. He had read every report about the Valorian Empire dozens of times. He knew they were cruel and had destroyed many worlds. But he also believed that every intelligent species could be reasoned with if you found the right words. Dr. Webb was nervous. She had spent months studying the alien language that Lisa Parker had decoded from the ruins. The symbols were complex and seemed to change meaning based on context. "I hope I can understand them well enough," she said quietly. "You'll do fine," Carter assured her. "Remember, we're not asking them to be our friends. We just want them to leave us alone." When they reached the border of Valorian space, things happened quickly. Their ship's alarm started screaming as a massive alien vessel appeared on their screens. It was huge, easily 10 times bigger than Unity, and covered in weapons. "Unknown vessel," came a voice over their communication system. The words were harsh and cold. "You have entered Valorian space without permission. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Carter straightened his uniform and walked to the communication station. "This is Ambassador Daniel Carter of Earth. We come in peace and request an audience with your leadership." There was silence for several minutes. Then the alien ship moved closer, and Carter could see it was not alone. Dozens of other warships appeared around them, all pointing their weapons at Unity. "You will follow us," the alien voice commanded. "Any attempt to flee or fight will result in your immediate destruction." Unity was escorted deeper into alien territory for 2 days. Carter spent the time preparing his speech and thinking about what he would say. He had negotiated with terrorists, dictators, and madmen, but this was different. These aliens had been conquering worlds for 1,000 years. Finally, they arrived at a massive space station that looked like a metal city floating in the void. Unity was brought inside and secured in a docking bay. Carter and his team were escorted through corridors filled with alien soldiers. The Valorians were tall and purple-skinned, with eyes that seemed to glow with inner fire. They wore armor that looked like it could stop bullets and carried weapons that hummed with energy. None of them spoke to the humans as they walked. They were brought to a large chamber where a Valorian in more elaborate armor waited for them. This one was clearly important, with decorations on his uniform and an air of absolute authority. "I am Supreme Admiral Korthak of the Valorian Empire," the alien said. His voice was deep and filled with contempt. "So the humans finally show themselves. We have known about your pathetic species for some time." Carter stepped forward, keeping his voice calm and respectful. "Supreme Admiral, I am Ambassador Carter. Earth sends greetings and an offer of friendship. We wish to discuss peaceful coexistence between our peoples." Korthak laughed, a sound like rocks breaking. "Friendship? Peace? You do not understand your situation, human. The Valorian Empire does not make friends with inferior species. We rule them or we destroy them." "We understand that you are powerful," Carter replied, "but Earth is not looking for conflict. We have resources, technology, and knowledge that we would be happy to trade. Surely there is more to gain from cooperation than from war." The alien admiral's eyes narrowed. "Trade? What could your primitive world possibly offer us that we cannot simply take?" Dr. Webb stepped forward nervously. "Our mathematical systems, our art, our music. Every species has something unique to contribute to the galaxy." Korthak waved his hand dismissively. "We have no use for your culture. The Empire takes what it needs and discards the rest. Your solar system contains materials we require. Your planet can be strip-mined for resources. As for your people, the strong ones will serve as slaves. The weak will be eliminated." Carter felt his heart sink, but he pressed on. "Supreme Admiral, what you're describing is genocide. Earth will not submit to slavery or destruction. We are offering you a peaceful alternative." "Alternative?" Korthak's voice rose in anger. "You dare to suggest alternatives to the Empire? Your single world against our 1,000-ship fleet?" Commander Rogers spoke up for the first time. "Admiral, you should know that Earth is not defenseless. We've had time to prepare since we learned of your existence. We've studied your methods and developed countermeasures." Korthak turned his burning gaze on Rogers. "Countermeasures? What could your primitive weapons possibly do against the might of the Empire?" "More than you might think," Rogers replied calmly. "Every world you've conquered had one thing in common. They were unprepared. We are not." Carter saw an opportunity and took it. Supreme Admiral, we're not here to threaten you. We're here to warn you. Earth is different from the other worlds you've conquered. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know how to defend ourselves. Warn me? Korthak's voice was dangerous now. You, with your tiny ship and your 3-person crew, dare to warn the Supreme Admiral of the Valorian Empire? Yes, Carter said firmly. Because unlike the other species you've encountered, humans have something you haven't faced before. We have the will to fight to the last person to protect our home. And we have the knowledge to make that fight cost you more than you're willing to pay, Dr. Webb added. We've studied the records from the worlds you've destroyed. We know your tactics, your weapons, your weaknesses. The species you conquered were peaceful by nature. Humans are not. Korthak gestured to guards standing nearby. Immediately, holographic displays appeared showing images of the Valorian fleet. Hundreds of massive warships filled the screens, along with footage of planets being bombarded from orbit. This is the power of the Empire, Korthak said. We have destroyed civilizations that spanned multiple star systems. What makes you think your single world could possibly resist us? Carter looked at the displays without flinching. Because you've never fought humans before. Every species you've conquered was either too peaceful to fight effectively or too divided to mount a real defense. We are neither. Humans have been at war with each other for our entire history, Rogers added. We've perfected the art of warfare out of necessity. And when threatened from outside, we unite like nothing you've ever seen. Furthermore, Carter continued, we've had time to study your empire. We know how you fight, and we know how to fight you. The people who built those ruins on Kepler 442c kept detailed records. We've learned from their mistakes. For the first time, Korthak looked uncertain. You threaten the Empire? We're not threatening, Carter said calmly. We're warning. Earth offers you one chance to turn away and leave our space alone. Find some other direction to expand. The galaxy is vast and there are plenty of worlds that won't fight back. And if we refuse? Korthak asked. Carter's voice became hard as steel. Then you'll discover what it means to attack a species that has been forged in the fires of constant warfare. You'll learn why humans are the only species on their planet that hunts for sport. You'll find out what happens when you threaten our families, our children, our home. The chamber fell silent. Korthak stared at the 3 humans for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then his expression twisted into a snarl of rage. Your arrogance will be your downfall, he hissed. The Empire moves to claim your system in 6 months. We will crush your defenses, burn your cities, and scatter your people to the winds. Your world will serve as an example to any other species that dares to defy us. Carter stood straighter. Then you've chosen war over peace. That's your decision to make. But remember this moment when your ships are burning in our solar system. Remember that Earth gave you a chance to walk away. The transmission ended abruptly, and the 3 humans found themselves alone with their guards. They were escorted back to Unity and released, their ship pushed out of Valorian space like unwanted garbage. As they began the long journey home, Dr. Webb broke the silence. Do you think we had any chance of convincing them? Carter stared out at the stars. No. I knew from the moment I saw those records that they would never listen. But we had to try. Now at least we can say we offered them peace. Commander Rogers was checking his notes. 6 months. That gives us time to finish our preparations. It's going to be the fight of our lives, Carter said quietly. Then we better make sure we win, Rogers replied. Unity turned toward home, carrying the news that would change everything. The warning had been given. The aliens had made their choice. Now Earth would show them the price of that choice. When Ambassador Carter returned to Earth with news that the aliens refused to listen, everything changed overnight. The world that had been slowly preparing for possible war suddenly threw everything into maximum effort. Every factory, every scientist, every soldier was focused on one goal: keeping Earth alive. General Ryan Stone stood in the command center, buried deep under the mountains of Colorado. Around him, Screens showed the progress of humanity's desperate preparations. He had been chosen to lead Earth's defense because he understood something that many other generals did not. To beat the aliens, humans would have to fight differently than anyone expected. "They think we'll fight like every other species they've conquered," Stone explained to his staff officers. "They expect us to put all our ships around Earth and try to stop them with brute force. Instead, we're going to fight like humans have always fought. Smart, dirty, and unpredictable." The plan was unlike anything any military had ever attempted. Instead of keeping all their forces in one place, Earth's defenders would spread out across the entire solar system. Hidden bases were being built on asteroids, moons, and even inside the rings of Saturn. Each base would operate alone with its own commanders and its own mission. Dr. Kevin Murphy had been given unlimited money and resources to build new weapons. Working with pieces of alien technology recovered from the ruins, his team created things that had never existed before. Weapons that could phase through enemy shields, tiny robots that could eat through metal, and gravity weapons that could crush ships like tin cans. "The key is not to match their firepower," Murphy explained to a group of military leaders. "We can't build ships as big as theirs, but we can build weapons that hit them in ways they've never seen before." Colonel Susan Blake was in charge of what they called the Ghost Fleet. These were small, fast ships barely bigger than fighter jets, but equipped with the most advanced stealth technology Earth could build. Hundreds of pilots from every country volunteered to fly these ships, knowing it was probably a suicide mission. "We're not trying to win in a fair fight," Blake told her pilots during training. "We're trying to be so annoying and unpredictable that they make mistakes. Hit them fast, hit them hard, then disappear before they can hit back." The civilian population was not forgotten. Every major city on Earth got massive defense guns. Millions of people volunteered to join the military or work in factories building weapons. For the first time in human history, every person on the planet was working toward the same goal. Children in schools learned how to recognize alien ships. Factory workers stayed at their jobs for 16 hours a day. Old people who had lived through previous wars shared their knowledge with young soldiers. The entire human race became one giant military unit. Admiral Beth Crawford commanded the orbital defense platforms from her station on the moon. These weren't just big guns pointed at space. They were connected to a network that covered the entire planet, designed to work together in ways the aliens wouldn't expect. "Remember," Crawford told her officers, "the moment their ships appear in our solar system, we are no longer explorers or diplomats. We are defenders of humanity's only home." 6 months after Carter's return, long-range sensors detected the approaching alien fleet. It was enormous, over 300 warships of various sizes, led by Supreme Admiral Korthak's flagship. The aliens were coming exactly as they had promised. "All stations, this is command," Crawford announced to every hidden base and ship in the solar system. "The Valorian fleet has entered our outer system. Execute Phase 1 of Operation Defiance." Throughout the solar system, hidden bases came to life. Weapons that had been silent for months suddenly powered up. The Ghost Fleet moved into position among the asteroids, ready to strike without warning. On Earth's surface, defense guns emerged from camouflaged positions. General Stone stood in his command bunker, surrounded by representatives from every nation on Earth. The old flags and symbols that had divided humanity for centuries still hung on the walls, but now they all served the same purpose. "Gentlemen and ladies," Stone said to the assembled leaders, "in a few hours we'll find out if our preparations were enough. The aliens are expecting to fight a primitive species with simple defenses. They're about to learn what it means to threaten the human home." In space, Supreme Admiral Korthak reviewed his tactical displays with satisfaction. His scouts reported minimal defenses around the human world, just as he had expected. This would be another easy conquest to add to the Empire's long list of victories. "Begin standard approach," Korthak ordered from his command throne. "All ships, maintain attack formation. We'll destroy their outer defenses first, then proceed to orbital bombardment of the planet." What Korthak didn't know was that his every movement was being watched by sensor networks hidden throughout the solar system. Every human commander from the asteroid belt to Earth's surface knew exactly where the alien fleet was and where it was going. Captain Lisa Turner commanded the battleship Retribution from its hiding place behind one of Saturn's moons. Her ship was not as big as the alien vessels, but it carried weapons that the Valorians had never encountered, weapons designed specifically to kill alien invaders. "All hands, battle stations," Turner announced to her crew. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who ever lived and every human who ever will live." The Valorian fleet moved through the outer solar system like a slow-moving storm of metal and death. Their formation was perfect, their weapons ready, their confidence absolute. They had conquered 1,000 worlds exactly like this. But as they passed the orbit of Jupiter, something unexpected happened. What looked like a small, dead asteroid suddenly came alive with energy signatures. Hidden weapons emerged from concealed positions and fired a barrage of quantum torpedoes that materialized inside the shields of 3 Valorian destroyers. "What was that?" Korthak demanded as explosions bloomed throughout his formation. "Where did those weapons come from?" "Unknown contacts decloaking throughout the system," his tactical officer reported with growing panic. "Sir, they're everywhere." Suddenly, the aliens found themselves under attack from dozens of directions at once. Hidden bases on asteroids and moons opened fire with weapons the Valorians had never seen before. The Ghost Fleet emerged from concealment like a swarm of angry insects, their small ships moving too fast for the alien gunners to track. Captain Roy Phillips led one of the Ghost Fleet squadrons in his tiny ship, barely 30 meters long. Around him, hundreds of other small vessels darted between the massive alien warships like minnows swimming around whales. But these minnows had very sharp teeth. "All Ghost units, this is Phillips," he broadcast to his squadron. "Remember the plan. Hit their sensors first, then their engines. Make them blind and slow, then get out before they can respond." The human ships worked together with precision that amazed even their own commanders. They attacked in coordinated swarms, overwhelming the alien point defenses, then vanished into the darkness before the larger ships could bring their main guns to bear. Admiral Crawford watched the battle unfold from her command center on the moon. The first phase was going better than anyone had dared hope, but she knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when the aliens realized they were in a real fight. "All units, this is Luna Command," she broadcast to the entire human fleet. "Excellent work so far. Now execute harassment pattern Delta. Keep them confused while our heavy hitters move into position." Throughout the solar system, larger human vessels began emerging from their hiding places. These ships looked different from anything the Valorians had ever seen. Where alien ships were smooth and elegant, human warships looked exactly like what they were: machines built for one purpose only, to destroy enemies of Earth. The battleship Defiance, under Captain Maria Santos, emerged from behind an asteroid, with all weapons charged. Her ship was covered in armor plating and bristled with guns of every size. It looked like a floating fortress, ugly but deadly. "Target the alien command ship," Santos ordered her weapons officer. "Show them what human engineering can do when we're properly motivated." The gravitic pulse that erupted from Defiance struck Korthak's flagship with invisible force, creating gravity wells that twisted the massive ship's hull like it was made of soft metal. Throughout the alien fleet, similar attacks began hitting ships with weapons that defied everything the Valorians thought they knew about warfare. "What kind of weapons are these?" Korthak roared as his flagship shuddered under the impossible stress. "How are they affecting our quantum-stabilized hulls?" "Unknown technology," his science officer replied, his voice shaking with fear. "Sir, they're using principles we don't understand." The battle raged for hours. The Valorians, who were used to overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and firepower, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to fight fair. Human forces struck from unexpected angles, used weapons that seemed impossible, and employed tactics that bordered on insanity. Commander Ashley Wright led a desperate attack against one of the alien carriers, her small ship loaded with experimental antimatter charges. She knew it was a suicide mission, but she also knew it might save thousands of lives on Earth. "This is for every world you destroyed," she broadcast. Supreme Admiral Korthak had made his decision. The human resistance was stronger than expected, but he still commanded over 200 warships. He would crush Earth's defenses through sheer force and show the galaxy what happened to species that dared resist the Empire. All ships, new orders, Korthak broadcast to his scattered fleet. Forget the outer defenses. We attack the human homeworld directly. Concentrate all firepower on their planetary shield generators and defense platforms. What Korthak didn't understand was that the humans had been planning for exactly this moment. Every move the alien fleet made had been anticipated, every tactical decision predicted. Earth's defenders had spent months preparing for a direct assault on their home. General Stone watched the alien fleet regroup and begin moving toward Earth. In the command bunker deep under the mountains, representatives from every nation worked side by side, their old differences forgotten in the face of extinction. Here they come, Stone said calmly. All surface installations prepare for final defensive operations. All fleet units begin converging on Earth orbit. It's time to show these aliens what it really means to threaten our home. As the Valorian fleet approached Earth, they discovered that the planet's defenses were unlike anything they had ever encountered. The orbital platforms they could see were just the tip of a massive defensive network that covered the entire world. Activate planetary shield grid, Stone commanded. Above Earth, thousands of generators came online at the same time. A shimmering energy barrier formed around the planet. But this wasn't just a simple shield. It was a trap designed to turn the aliens' own weapons against them. Captain Carlos Rodriguez commanded one of the orbital defense platforms. His station, hidden behind the moon until now, moved into position as the alien fleet drew closer. Around him, his crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who knew their lives and their world depended on their performance. Alien fleet entering optimal range, his weapons officer reported. All systems charged and ready. Wait for my command, Rodriguez replied. Let them get close enough to commit to the attack. The Valorian fleet came in like a hammer, their massive ships firing everything they had at Earth's defenses. Energy beams and missiles filled space as hundreds of alien weapons targeted the orbital platforms and shield generators. But as their weapons struck the planetary shield, something unexpected happened. Instead of weakening the barrier, the alien attacks were absorbed and redirected through the defensive network. The more the Valorians fired, the stronger Earth's defenses became. What is happening? Korthak demanded as his tactical displays showed his weapons having no effect. Why aren't we breaking through their shields? Sir, their defensive grid is somehow converting our weapon energy into power for their own systems, his science officer reported in disbelief. The more we attack, the stronger they get. Before Korthak could respond, Earth's hidden surface weapons revealed themselves. Massive cannons emerged from forests, deserts, and mountains all around the planet. These weren't ordinary weapons. They were converted particle accelerators, each one nearly a kilometer long and powered by the energy the aliens were unknowingly providing. Captain Maria Santos commanded one of the surface batteries hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest. Her weapon had been disguised as a research facility, but now it showed its true purpose. As the orbital collectors fed energy from the alien bombardment into her cannon, she watched the power levels climb higher than they had ever gone before. Target acquired, her gunner announced. Valorian dreadnought, designated Alpha 7. Fire, Santos ordered. The beam that erupted from the jungle could be seen from space, a pillar of pure energy that punched through the alien ship like it was made of paper. Similar weapons opened fire from every continent, turning Earth itself into a massive fortress that used the enemy's own attacks for ammunition. But the real surprise came when the second wave of human ships arrived. These weren't the small Ghost Fleet vessels that had been harassing the aliens for days. These were humanity's secret weapons, ships built using alien technology, but improved with human creativity and desperation. Admiral Janet Foster commanded the fleet from her flagship, the Defiance. Unlike the smooth, elegant alien vessels, human ships looked like exactly what they were: weapons of war. They were covered in armor, bristling with guns, and scarred from countless battles in the asteroid belt where they had been testing their systems. All ships, engage the enemy, Foster ordered. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for the right of humanity to exist. The human fleet struck the Valorians with coordinated precision that left the aliens reeling. Each ship was designed for a specific job, working together like parts of a giant war machine. Carriers launched swarms of fighters, battleships engaged the larger enemy vessels, and destroyers hunted down anything that tried to escape. Captain Nick Harrison piloted one of the new human fighters, a craft that combined alien technology with human reflexes and creativity. His squadron moved through space like a pack of wolves, hunting the larger alien ships with tactics no civilized species would consider using. Gold leader to all units. Harrison broadcast to his squadron. Execute attack pattern Omega-7. Remember, when your weapons run out, use your ship as a weapon. Make every shot count. The fighter swarms hit the Valorian fleet like a plague of metal locusts. They used tactics that violated every rule of civilized warfare, ramming enemy ships when their ammunition ran out, detonating their own fuel supplies to damage nearby vessels, and targeting life support systems to kill enemy crews. Commander, Lysa Park led a bomber wing against one of the alien carriers. Her ship was loaded with a new type of weapon that Dr. Murphy's team had developed, a virus that could infect alien computer systems and turn their own ships against them. Deploying. Cyber warfare package, Park announced as her bomber released its payload. Let's see how they like fighting their own technology. The alien carrier's weapons suddenly turned on its escort ships as the human virus took control of its targeting systems. Within minutes, the massive vessel was firing on its own fleet, while its crew struggled desperately to regain control. On the surface of his flagship, Korthak watched his mighty fleet being torn apart by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. These humans seemed to take pleasure in destruction, to embrace death as readily as victory. "Sir, we've lost 60% of the fleet," his tactical officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "The humans are broadcasting surrender terms." The transmission came through on all frequencies. President Claire Morgan, the elected leader of Earth's unified government, spoke with the authority of an entire species behind her words. "Supreme Admiral Korthak, this is President Morgan. Your invasion has failed, your fleet is destroyed, and your empire's expansion ends here. We offer you one final choice. Surrender unconditionally and stand trial for your crimes, or die with your ships." Korthak's pride warred with his survival instinct. The Valorian Empire had never surrendered, never retreated, never shown weakness to an inferior species. But as he watched the last of his escort vessels explode under human fire, he realized that his pride might cost him his life. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "the humans are targeting our engines. If we don't respond soon, we won't be able to escape." Around them, the bridge crew looked to their commander for orders. These aliens who had conquered 1,000 worlds now faced the possibility of becoming prisoners of the very species they had come to enslave. "Sir," the tactical officer added, "our shields are failing. Direct hit to the bridge in 30 seconds. Unless we surrender or find cover." Korthak looked at his tactical display one more time. Of the 300 ships he had brought to conquer Earth, fewer than 50 remained operational. His proud fleet, which had never known defeat, was dying around him. The human ships moved closer, their weapons trained on the remaining Valorian vessels but not firing. They were giving him time to make his choice, showing a mercy that Korthak had never offered his own victims. Korthak began, the words sticking in his throat like poison. "We surrender." The response was immediate and efficient. Human boarding parties moved to secure the remaining alien ships while medical teams prepared to treat wounded regardless of their species. It was a kindness that Korthak had never shown the beings his empire had conquered. As he was led away, in restraints, Korthak realized that his empire's 1,000-year reign of terror was over. The humans had not just defeated them, they had done it so completely that no other species would dare threaten Earth for generations to come. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won not through superior technology or numbers, but through the one thing the Valorians had never encountered: the absolute refusal to give up when fighting for their home. In the aftermath, as the debris of the alien fleet drifted through space, Earth's leaders made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. Rather than simply celebrating their victory, they began planning the liberation of every world the Empire had conquered. The warning had been given. The Empire had chosen war, and now humanity would collect the full price of that choice. The war was over, but for humanity, the real work was just beginning. Supreme Admiral Korthak sat in a holding cell on Luna Station, staring out at the debris field that had once been his mighty fleet. Around him, other Valorian prisoners waited to learn their fate from their human captors. President Claire Morgan stood before the United Earth Council, addressing representatives from every nation on the planet. The chamber was filled with people who had spent their entire lives believing that humanity was alone in the universe. Now they faced decisions that would affect the entire galaxy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morgan began, "we have won the greatest victory in human history, but with that victory comes responsibility. We now know that there are hundreds of worlds out there suffering under Valorian rule. The question before us is simple. What are we going to do about it?" Admiral Janet Foster, hero of the Battle of Earth, stood at the center of the debate. Her fleet had dealt the killing blow to the alien invasion, and now many people wanted her to lead humanity's next mission. "The Valorians kept detailed records," Foster explained to the council. "We found star maps showing the location of every world they've conquered. Billions of innocent beings are still trapped under their rule, waiting for someone to free them." General Stone, architect of Earth's defense, supported the liberation plan. "We can't just sit here and celebrate while other species suffer the same fate we almost faced. We have the technology now, we have the ships, and we have the knowledge. Most importantly, we have the moral obligation to act." But not everyone agreed. Director Helen Ross, who had originally advocated for diplomacy with the aliens, now urged caution. "We've just fought our first interstellar war. We're exhausted, our resources are depleted, and we don't know what other threats might be out there. Perhaps we should focus on rebuilding and defending our own system." The debate raged for weeks. Some argued that humanity should become the galaxy's police force. Others insisted that Earth should focus on its own protection. In the end, it was a message from one of the liberated Valorian prisoners that settled the matter. Commander Zeth had been a mid-level officer in the Valorian fleet, one of the few aliens who had shown remorse for his empire's crimes. He had spent days talking with human interrogators, sharing information about Valorian-controlled worlds and their defenses. "Your species is unique," Zeth told Dr. Nancy Webb during one of their sessions. "In all my years serving the Empire, I never saw conquered peoples fight back the way you did. Most species either submit immediately or fight a conventional war they can't win. But you fought smart, you fought dirty, and you never gave up." Webb was working with a team of linguists and psychologists to understand the alien mindset. "Why didn't you fight back against your own empire when you knew what they were doing was wrong?" Zeth's purple skin darkened with shame. "Because we were afraid. The Empire taught us from birth that resistance was futile, that obedience was survival. We became willing slaves to our own government. But other species fought back," Webb pointed out. "We found records of resistance movements on dozens of worlds." "Yes, and they all failed because they fought alone," Zeth replied. "Each world tried to resist by itself without help from others. The Empire would concentrate its full might against one planet at a time until the resistance was crushed." This conversation was recorded and played before the Earth Council. It was Zeth's final words that convinced them to act. "If your species truly wants to stop the Empire," the alien had said, "you cannot do it by defending only your own world. You must liberate others and unite them against the Empire. Only together can the conquered worlds break free." The decision was made. Earth would launch Operation Liberation, a campaign to free every world under Valorian control and build a coalition of free species to prevent future empires from rising. Admiral Foster was given command of the Liberation Fleet. It consisted of 200 human ships, including many vessels captured from the Valorians and retrofitted with human technology. The fleet also carried something the galaxy had never seen before: an integrated crew of humans and aliens working together. Captain Roy Phillips, former commander of a Ghost Fleet squadron, now commanded one of the converted Valorian cruisers. His crew included humans, liberated Valorian prisoners who had renounced the Empire, and representatives from species that had been enslaved for generations. "This is different from anything we've done before," Phillips told his mixed crew as they prepared for their first liberation mission. "We're not just fighting to defend our home anymore. We're fighting to give other species the chance to have homes of their own." The first target was a mining world called Zerion Prime, where the Empire had enslaved a peaceful species called the Bellari for over 300 years. The Bellari had been forced to work in dangerous mines, extracting rare minerals that powered Valorian technology. The liberation of Zerion Prime took less than 6 hours. The small Valorian garrison, expecting no resistance from the enslaved population, was completely unprepared for an attack by experienced human forces. When the liberation fleet arrived, they found Bellari workers ready to join the fight against their oppressors. "We have waited so long for this day," said Elder Corvani, leader of the Bellari resistance. "When we heard that a species called humanity had defeated the Empire's main fleet, we dared to hope that freedom might be possible." The liberated Bellari provided detailed information about other Valorian installations and helped modify human weapons to be more effective against alien technology. Within weeks, they had volunteers ready to join the liberation fleet. The campaign continued for months. World after world was freed from Valorian rule, and each liberation brought new allies to the growing coalition. The Thrakari, a warrior species that had been enslaved for their fighting abilities, brought military expertise. The Zephyrians, master engineers who had been forced to build Valorian ships, provided technical knowledge. Dr. Kevin Murphy worked with alien scientists to develop new technologies that combined the best ideas from multiple species. "Every species we liberate brings something unique to the table," he explained to a gathering of researchers. "The Valorians saw diversity as weakness, but were proving that it's actually our greatest strength." The Empire's response was swift but disorganized. Without their main fleet and with Korthak in human custody, the remaining Valorian forces were scattered and demoralized. Many alien governors surrendered without a fight when human ships appeared in their systems. But the most important victory came not through military action, but through a simple communication broadcast. President Morgan, speaking on behalf of the Coalition of Free Worlds, sent a message that was transmitted to every inhabited planet in the galaxy. "To all beings suffering under oppression," Morgan said, her voice carrying across the stars, "know that you are not alone. Know that freedom is possible. Know that there are those who will fight beside you for the right to determine your own destiny." The broadcast sparked uprisings across the galaxy. On world after world, enslaved populations rose against their Valorian masters. The Empire's 1,000-year reign of terror crumbled in less than 2 years. The final battle took place at Valoria, itself, the Empire's capital world. But by the time the Liberation Fleet arrived, they found the planet in the hands of its own people. The Valorian citizens, inspired by the example of freedom they had seen spreading across the galaxy, had overthrown their own government. Former Supreme Admiral Korthak was eventually put on trial for war crimes. The proceeding was held on a neutral world, with representatives from every species that had suffered under Empire rule serving as judges. During his testimony, Korthak was asked why the Empire had chosen conquest over cooperation. "Because we believed that might make right," he answered, his voice heavy with defeat. "We thought that the strong had the right to rule the weak. We never imagined that the weak could become strong by working together." Korthak was sentenced to life in prison, but he was allowed to write his memoirs. His book became required reading throughout the galaxy, a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of standing up to bullies. The final chapter of his memoir read, "Humanity taught the galaxy a lesson that we had forgotten. Unity is stronger than conquest. Cooperation is more powerful than domination. And sometimes the greatest warriors are those who fight not for glory, but for the simple right to exist in peace." 5 years after the Battle of Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's first permanent outpost beyond the solar system. Around him, beings from dozens of different species worked together to build a better future for the galaxy. The station served as headquarters for the Galactic Council, a democratic body that had replaced the Valorian Empire. Every species, no matter how small or weak, had an equal voice in the Council's decisions. Hard to believe it all started with a routine survey mission, Morrison said to Commander Lisa Parker, who now served as the Council's chief archaeologist. Parker smiled as she watched a group of human children playing with young aliens from various species. The aliens thought they were conquering a primitive world. Instead, they awakened something that had been sleeping in the darkness between stars. Earth's warning had been ignored. The Empire HFY